Tonight, I want to teach you something Epictetus understood from the inside out. Something that could change how you experience your relationships, your peace of mind, and your sense of self. It's simple to say, but profound in its implications. You don't have to let anyone live in your mind like a permanent resident. Consider where you are. It's late. The room is dim. The day is technically over. Your phone is finally quiet. The door is closed. The world has stepped back a little. And yet, as you lie there, staring at the ceiling or into the dark, one person is still completely present. More present, actually, than the bed beneath you. Their face appears first, or their voice. A single sentence they said, a text they didn't send. You replay the last conversation, then the one before that, then the one you wish you had. You imagine what you might say next time. You imagine what they're doing right now. It's as if someone has taken a chair inside your mind and refuses to stand up. The day has ended on the outside, but it has not ended on the inside. You've left their physical presence, but you haven't really left the relationship. You carry it into your pillow, into your breathing, into the space that should be only yours. And when you find yourself doing this night after night, it can feel like you no longer belong fully to yourself. Maybe it's an ex, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's someone you're hoping will choose you, or someone who hurt you deeply. You tell yourself you're just trying to understand what happened. But as you lie there and rehearse their every word, their every silence, their possible future reactions, your energy gathers around their image, and your own life fades to the edges. Tonight is not about blaming you for that, and it is not about attacking them. There is a different possibility, a way to gently reclaim the inner room you've been renting out for free, a way to soften the grip of this obsessive presence without forcing yourself to stop caring, and without pretending that what happened did not matter. Epictetus, an ancient Stoic teacher who was born a slave and later became a philosopher, knew both captivity and freedom in a very literal sense. He taught that we are disturbed not by things, but by the views we take of them. Other people's actions, their opinions, their approval or rejection are not truly under your control, but the way you attend to them in your mind is. He would say that when someone lives constantly in your thoughts, when you let their imagined reactions dictate your mood, you are practicing a kind of voluntary slavery. You may be free in every outer sense, but inwardly, you hand them the keys. Over the next 2 hours, in a slow meditative rhythm, we will explore how this happens, why certain people occupy so much inner space, and how Epictetus's way of seeing could set you free. You will be guided to notice the chains, and then to loosen them, step by gentle step, until that inner sky begins to clear again. With that image of inner chains still in your mind, we meet the first and quietest shock in Epictetus. It is not the people outside you who hold those chains. It is the way you think about them. His premise is simple. We are not disturbed by things or by people, but by the views we take of them. Not by the event, but by the interpretation. Not by the message, but by the story you wrap around it afterward. Someone ignores your text. That is an event. You tell yourself, they don't care, I am not important. That is a view. Your boss frowns in a meeting. That is an event. You silently conclude, I am failing. My position is at risk. That is a view. What actually happens is one thing. What your mind does with it is something else entirely. If someone lives rent-free in your head, Epictetus would say, you are the one paying the mortgage. You pay with your attention. You pay with your sleep. You pay with your peace. Every replayed conversation is a payment. Every imagined argument Every constant checking of their profile is more psychic energy handed over. Notice how wide this pattern reaches, a parent's criticism that you still hear years later, a partner's distance that you constantly scan for, like weather, an ex's betrayal that replays at 3 a.m, a child's choices that you monitor in your mind all day, a boss's judgment that follows you home, a friend's silence that becomes a whole story about abandonment. Not your parents, not your partner, not your ex, not your children, not your boss, not your friends are actually in your bedroom at night, but their shadows are, their echoes are, their imagined faces float in your inner sky. When I say the problem is not the person, but your thinking, it can sound cold. It can sound like blame, as if you are at fault for being hurt, anxious, or preoccupied. That is not what Epictetus is pointing to. He is not accusing you. He is uncovering where your hidden freedom still lives, because if the disturbance lived in them, you would be helpless. You could only wait for them to change. But if the disturbance lives in the view, in the story, then there is a place where you can work, a place inside yourself that is still yours. Carl Jung understood something similar from a different angle. He would tell you that when you fixate on another person, your own projection takes over. Epictetus is naming the same movement in more practical terms. Your judgment, your opinion, your inner commentary. We are taught that caring means thinking constantly about someone, that love is measured by how full of them your mind is. Epictetus invites a different standard, care in action, not captivity in thought. Show up, speak honestly, do what is kind and just. Then, let the mind grow quiet again. In the next section, we will look more closely at what happens inside you when that quiet is impossible, and why certain people seem to occupy far more inner space than they deserve. When that quiet is impossible, Epictetus would ask you a very simple, very unsettling question. Who owns your mind right now? Not in theory, in this exact moment, as you lie there replaying what someone said or didn't say. Consider who is speaking to you. Epictetus was born into literal slavery. His body was owned. His time was owned. Even his limp, the pain in his leg, came from someone else's power over him. Later, when he was freed and became a philosopher, he turned his attention to a different kind of chain. Not iron on the wrists, but ideas clamped around the mind. He wanted to understand why people who were outwardly free still walked around as if dragged by invisible ropes. Epictetus noticed that after the external chains are gone, most people keep manufacturing internal ones. No master needed, no whip required, just a remembered insult, a disapproving look, an imagined opinion, and suddenly, you are not living your own day anymore. You are living in reaction to someone else's. Think about how you let another person's words dominate your inner world. A colleague criticizes your work in a meeting. The moment itself is brief, 10 seconds, maybe 30. But then you carry it home. You replay their tone in the car. You rewrite your answer in the shower. You lie in bed and run through 10 different versions of the conversation. The meeting ended hours ago, but inside, it never ends. You are still there, still defending yourself to someone who has already moved on. Or you find yourself scrolling through an ex's social media late at night, watching their stories, studying who liked their photos. Your relationship is over in reality, but not in your mind. You are still explaining yourself to them, still trying to prove something, still asking silently, was I enough? They are not in the room, but they are directing your attention, your mood, your sense of worth. Or you are mentally arguing with a parent who isn't there, rehearsing the speech you will probably never give, hearing their critical voice, answering it again and again. You are decades older now, but internally you stand in the same small doorway, trying to be heard. Epictetus would call this a kind of voluntary slavery. You cannot control what others do. You cannot rewrite the past, but you can refuse to keep finishing their work for them in your own mind. Jung understood this in a different language. When you constantly rehearse someone inside, you are not in relationship with the real person anymore. You are in relationship with a projection, an inner tyrant built out of your own energy. Right now, very gently, notice whose voice has had that kind of power in you recently. Not to blame yourself, not to fix it yet, just to see. Because in the next section, we will look at why certain voices hook you so deeply and what they are really feeding on. You might already feel whose voice has that power in you, the one that still speaks, even when they are not in the room. And because you are a caring person, your first instinct is to defend it. You tell yourself, I think about them constantly, because I love them, because I'm responsible, because if I don't, something will go wrong. Begin with that noble side. You think about someone because you want to protect them. You replay the argument because you want to repair it. You analyze their silences because you want to understand. The intention is warm. The heart is sincere. If you shame yourself for caring, you will only cling more tightly to the very patterns that are exhausting you. But there is a quiet shift that happens, a shift from caring to captivity, from movement to mental circling. On one side, there are real actions in the real world, a phone call you actually make, a boundary you calmly state, an apology you offer, a plan you put on the calendar. On the other side, there are endless, looping thoughts that never lead to movement, imaginary conversations, fantasies of revenge or reconciliation, scenarios that play out only in your mind and never touch reality. When you live mostly in that second side, the drain is subtle. Hours pass, days pass, you feel drained, but nothing outside you has changed. The relationship is the same, the situation is the same. Only your energy is lower, your sleep lighter, your body tighter. Jung understood this as a misdirection of psychic energy, poured into a story instead of into life. You know this captivity by its felt sense. You sit down to work, and their name walks into the room of your attention. You try to rest, and a memory pulls you back into an old scene. You are laughing with a friend, and suddenly, you are not there anymore. You are in an imagined future where they finally see, finally regret, finally return. When you find yourself being pulled like this, again and again, you are not just thinking about someone, you are being occupied. Epictetus offers you a different map. He says, some things are in your control, and some are not. Your judgments, your attention, your choices, these are yours. Other people's behavior, the past, their inner world, these are not. This is a radical shift. If your attention is yours, then every time you hand it over to an absent person, you are entering a kind of voluntary slavery. Here is the pattern interrupt. What if caring did not have to mean constant thinking? What if love could be measured less by how many hours someone lives in your mind, and more by the clarity and kindness of the few actions you actually take? How might your nights feel different if your mind were less crowded and your concern became quieter, simpler, more grounded in what you can truly do? In the next section, we will explore how to begin making that shift from mental captivity to a gentler, more present form of care. To make that shift, it can help to realize that Epictetus is not the only one pointing to this inner captivity. Another guide spent his whole life watching how certain people take up far more space in the psyche than they ever do in the room. That guide is Carl Jung, two very different men in very different centuries, looking at the same human problem. Why does someone you barely see anymore still live constantly in your mind? Why does a brief conversation echo for days, while whole weeks of your actual life pass in a blur? Epictetus gives one answer. You are seized by your impressions, by the judgments you attach to what someone said or did. Jung gives another language for the same experience. He calls it projection. Projection occurs when you unconsciously place your own fears, your own desires, your own unlived possibilities onto another person, and then react to them as if those qualities truly belong out there. You are not just seeing them, you are seeing a story about them, made from pieces of yourself. When you find yourself unable to stop thinking about someone, Jung would tell you that the intensity is rarely about the actual relationship in front of you. It is about the inner material that has been hooked, activated, pulled into the light. Think about the boss who criticizes your work. On paper, it is one comment, one meeting, one email, but inside, they become the strict parent you could never please, the teacher who shamed you, the early experience of being small and powerless. You feel again the old panic, the old collapse. You rehearse the interaction all night, as if your survival depended on it, or the ex who left. They are now a person you rarely see, perhaps never, yet they carry all your fear of abandonment, all your doubt that you are lovable, all the moments in childhood when someone important turned away. One message from them, or their total silence, can drain your energy for days. The reaction is larger than the situation because the figure in front of you is standing in for a whole, invisible crowd behind you. Epictetus would say, you are disturbed not by things, but by the views you take of them. Jung would say, you are caught in projection and shadow. Both are describing the same mistake. Inner material misread as outer reality, inner wounds acting themselves out on external screens. This recognition is not an accusation, it is an invitation. If someone lives too strongly in your mind, it means something in you is asking to be seen, and this could set you free, because by the end of this episode, you will not only see why that person has such power in your inner world, you will begin to see how they can become a doorway back into your own psyche and into a quieter, more grounded freedom that no one else controls. In the next section, we will walk through how to take that doorway, step by step. Let's walk through how your inner world puts on someone else's face, because if you can see this clearly, you can stop fighting ghosts and start relating to real human beings again. Picture this. Projection is when your mind takes something inside you, an emotion, a fear, a longing, and hangs it like a mask on another person. Then it forgets it did that. You look at them, but you are actually looking at your own material, your own history, your own unmet life, painted over their features. A lot of what feels like they are doing this to me is really, this is already living in me. Disowned anger that you were never allowed to feel. Unmet needs for care that no one ever consistently answered. A deep fear of abandonment that once was realistic when you were small and dependent. A hunger for approval that became the way you tried to earn safety. Idealized fantasies that someone perfect will arrive and finally rescue you from the weight of being yourself. All of that lives inside. But when you find yourself constantly thinking about someone, your mind may quietly export it. You feel anger and say, they are so cruel. You feel need and say, they are my only source of comfort. You feel terror of being left and say, they are unpredictable. You feel your own longing for perfection and say, they are the one, they will save me. Notice what happens there. The inner becomes outer, the origin gets blurred. You start saying, they make me feel this way, as if they are pressing buttons that did not already exist, or they are this way, as if your description is a simple photograph, not a story shaped by years of pain and hope. Jung understood this as misattribution of psychic energy. Your mind takes an inner charge and attributes it to the other person, then reacts to that projection as if it were entirely theirs. You argue with them in your head. You defend yourself against accusations they never actually spoke. You cling to promises they never actually made. Notice the split that forms. There is the real person with their own complexity, their own contradictions, their own current growth or stagnation, and there is the person who lives in your mind, built from fragments of memory, fear, fantasy, and longing. Two different figures, often only loosely related, and the more you feed the inner figure with rehearsal and rumination, the more solid it feels, the more you invest it with power, until your relationship is less with the living human being and more with the image you have constructed. Here is the hard truth that could set you free. Much of the story you keep telling about this person is more about you than about them, more about your childhood than their character, more about your wounds than their intentions, more about your desires than their actual capacity. In the next section, we will look at how Epictetus would invite you to test this in real time by bringing in the Stoic question of what is actually in your control and what is not. So when Epictetus steps into this picture, he doesn't start with the other person at all. He starts with what rises up inside you the moment their name, their face, their last message flashes across your mind. He calls these sudden arrivals impressions. An impression is that immediate inner picture and feeling that appears before you can think about it. The tightening in your chest when you see they've read your text and not replied. The sinking heaviness when you imagine them with someone else. The sudden certainty, they hate me, or I can't live without their approval. It feels like reality. It feels like a fact. Epictetus says, it's not a fact, it's a visitor. For him, the first movement in your mind is not a verdict, but a proposal, not a command, but an invitation. An impression arrives and says, look, this is how it is. And your freedom begins in what you say back. He actually gives you the words. When an impression appears, they're ignoring me. I need them. I'm nothing without this relationship. You are to pause and answer, very quietly. You are just an impression, not the thing you claim to represent. That single sentence is like a hand on the brake. It interrupts the automatic slide into obsession. You know how it feels when you don't pause. The impression appears, and you obey it. You reach for your phone. You check their page again. You replay the conversation for the 10th time. You argue with them in your head. You submit over and over to an inner picture, as if it were a master giving orders. Epictetus would call that a kind of voluntary slavery. When you find yourself in that state, the pause is your first act of inner freedom. You step back. You look at the image of them in your mind, the way you would look at a cloud passing across the sky. You notice the colors, the story it tells, the energy it stirs up in your body. But you remember, this is a picture in me, not proof about them. Jung understood this too. He would tell you that what feels like an irresistible truth about the other person is often a projection that has hardened into an impression. Your abandoned child self, your fear of being left, your hunger to be chosen, These gather themselves into a single face and then declare, this is who they are, this is what they mean, and you believe it because you never question its authority. Epictetus is inviting you to start questioning, to treat each impression as testimony, not as a final judgment, to ask, before you obey, whose voice is this really? What part of myself is speaking through this image? If the next time this person's face appears in your mind, you greeted it as a visitor to be examined, not a master to be obeyed, how different would your night unfold? And more importantly, what new kind of power would wake up in you when you discover what you can do with that pause? That pause is where you finally see the pattern. Because before you can change anything, you have to recognize that this person has quietly become an inner tyrant, not out there in the world, in here, in your own mind. The most obvious sign is the rehearsal. You notice yourself replaying the same conversation dozens of times. The argument in the kitchen, the meeting with your boss, the moment they walked away. You run it again and again, slowing it down, changing your lines, changing theirs, as if perfecting the scene could change the past. You craft perfect comebacks in the shower. You rehearse apologies that never get spoken. You imagine future confrontations where, finally, you are understood, or finally, you win. None of this is actually happening, yet your body reacts as if it is. Your heart rate rises, your jaw tightens, your sleep breaks. Jung understood that when you find yourself constantly rehearsing these inner dramas, you are no longer in relationship with a real person. You are in relationship with a projection, with a story that is now feeding on your energy. Then there are the emotional loops. Nothing new has happened externally. No new message, no new rejection. And yet a song comes on, or you pass a familiar street, or you see someone with their hairstyle, and suddenly there is a wave. Anger, shame, longing, anxiety. It surges through you as if the event is happening again right now. Then it recedes. Then it returns. Over and over. You tell yourself you are just sensitive, or that this is what love is. But notice the pattern. The emotion is not responding to reality. It is responding to a memory image that has become charged, almost sacred, in your inner world. And then, the compulsive checking. You scroll their social media, not once, but many times a day. You reread old messages, searching for hidden meanings you somehow missed. You ask mutual friends about them, casually, but inside you are desperate for any update. Even when you are not with your phone, you are mentally scanning for signs of their approval or disapproval. Did they see your post? Why didn't they respond? What does their silence mean? Pattern interrupt for a moment. Imagine there were no phones, no internet, no way to check. How much space would suddenly open inside you? When someone becomes your inner tyrant, the trial continues, long after the external relationship has changed or ended. Months after a breakup, years after leaving a job, even decades after a parent has died, you still hear their voice, giving commentary on your choices. You still feel you have to justify yourself to them in your own head. Epictetus would say, this is a kind of voluntary slavery. The chains are now made of thoughts, and many people live this way for years. It is common, it is understandable, but it is not inevitable. Both Epictetus and Jung point to the same quiet doorway. If your attention can be taken back, the tyrant loses power. In the next section, we will look at how to begin that, taking back, moment by moment, thought by thought. So now we must look at the tyrant, who is no longer in the room, but still speaking in your mind. The conversation is over. The message is read. The meeting ended days ago. And yet, As you lie in bed or wash the dishes or walk to work, you notice that you are still there, inside that moment, replaying it again and again. Rumination is your mind trying to solve an emotional equation it does not yet understand. Something did not add up. A look on their face, a silence after your message, a sharp comment in front of others. So your mind goes back over the same variables, the same words, the same gestures, the same silences, as if by running the numbers one more time, the answer will finally appear. Rumination feels like thinking, but it is not real understanding. It is an attempt at control. If you can just find the hidden meaning in their tone, if you can just detect the exact second when they lost respect for you, if you can just craft the perfect response that you should have said, then maybe you can predict future pain. Maybe you can avoid humiliation next time. Maybe you can rewrite the story in which you did not know what to do. Jung would tell you that this is a form of projection. You are not only replaying what someone did, you are constantly adding what you fear, what you desire, what you cannot yet accept about yourself. Epictetus would add that in doing this, you are giving away your freedom. The event is finished in the outer world, but you keep it alive inside, as if you have volunteered to be hurt again. Notice how, over time, rumination turns one scene into an ongoing presence. The person becomes like a channel on an inner television. You can switch to them at any idle moment, waiting in line, scrolling your phone, trying to fall asleep. Without even deciding, you tune in. You watch the same episode. You feel the same sting. Your energy drains in the same places. Epictetus would name this simply, it is not the insult that continues to wound you, but your judgment about it, rehearsed and renewed. The past cannot reach into the present by itself. You have to open the door. You have to grant it stage time in the inner theater, again and again, often without realizing you are the director. So there is a gentle but serious question here. If all these replays have not freed you yet, if they have not brought peace or clarity, what if the way out is not a better replay at all? What if the real shift is a different relationship to the entire theater, to the screen, to the director, to the audience inside you? In the next section, we will explore how Epictetus invites you to step back from the stage, to see the play as a play, and to discover what you can actually control when someone appears in your mind yet again. When you don't step back from the stage, when you stay fused to the play, the person in your mind becomes a full-time job, not in reality, but in the quiet background process of your attention that never really turns off. You wake up, and they are there, not in your room, but in your thoughts. A sentence they said, a look they gave, a message they didn't send. By the time you've brushed your teeth, you are already tired. Not because anything happened this morning, but because your mind has been working overtime on them since before you opened your eyes. Obsessive focus is exhausting, even when nothing is actually happening in the relationship. You find yourself rereading old conversations instead of answering new emails. You start a task, then drift into an imaginary argument. You sit down to rest, but your rest is not rest. It is more rehearsal, more projection, more invisible labor done on behalf of someone who isn't even there. Over days and weeks, this constant expenditure of energy has a second cost. Your identity begins to bend around them. You don't just think about what they did. You think about what they might do, what they might think, what they might feel about you. Slowly, your own preferences grow faint. Your desires become reactive, not originating from yourself, but orbiting their possible reactions. You notice it in small ways. You dress, not for your own taste, but for the fantasy audience in your head. You delay decisions because you're waiting to see what they will choose first. You measure your day as good or bad by one metric. Did something happen with them? Jung understood this as a dangerous shrinking of the self around a single figure in the inner world. And there is a third cost, which Epictetus would see very clearly: the opportunity cost. Every minute spent in an imaginary confrontation or in a fantasy reconciliation is a minute not spent inside your own life. While you silently debate them in your mind, your body is walking through a room you do not really see. People who care about you move around you like background scenery. Epictetus is radical here. He says your attention is your most precious power, not your status, not your history, your capacity to choose what to think about. When you hand that over to someone else's imagined behavior, you are, in his language, entering voluntary slavery. So when someone lives too much in your mind, it is not just that they take up space. It is that your own life has less room to unfold, less light, less air. But what if this same realization could set you free, if you learned how to reclaim that attention, moment by moment? In the next section, we'll turn to how Epictetus would train you to do exactly that. To reclaim that attention, you first need to see where it actually goes. Not in theory, but in the concrete way your day unfolds. You are not just dealing with people out there. You are dealing with two worlds at once. There is the outer world. This is the realm Epictetus wakes you up to. The world of bodies and voices, of someone's face in front of you, their tone, their actual words, their present actions. Here you can see and you can hear. You can respond in real time. You can say yes. You can say no. You can walk away. You can renegotiate the relationship. In this outer world, your boss is just a person speaking in a meeting. Your ex is just a name on a screen, or a stranger passing you on the street. Your parent is just a voice on the phone, in this particular moment, saying this particular sentence. The outer world is specific. It is fresh. It keeps changing. Then there is the inner world, the world Epictetus is most concerned about, because this is where your suffering is constantly rehearsed. Inside, people are not bodies and voices. They are images, stories, emotional tones. They become composites of every past conversation, every expectation, every fear and longing that your mind has attached to them. When you think of someone, you summon this composite, not the living person. You meet an inner version, a memory stitched to a fantasy, a projection wrapped around a wound, and you react to that, sometimes with rage, sometimes with shame, sometimes with desperate hope. Notice how this inner version almost always lags behind reality. Years can pass, and you are still arguing with what they said at 23. They may have grown, apologized, moved on, changed their life completely. But in your mind, they are frozen at the moment of impact. You are still flinching from an old blow. Take the ex-partner. Out there, they have a new job, a new city, maybe a new family. They might even have written to say they are sorry, that they see what they did, that they wish you well. But inside, the ex you carry still holds the full weight of betrayal, the unanswered questions, the unresolved longing. The version that left you is the version that stays. Here is the pattern interrupt. When you find yourself spiraling about them, pause and ask, who am I actually with right now? Them or my own mind? Epictetus, like Jung, would tell you that most of the time, you are locked in a relationship with your own psyche, wearing their face as a mask. The person in your mind is not the actual person. It is your ongoing relationship with yourself, condensed into their image. Seeing this clearly could set you free. Because once you know you are dealing with an inner construct, You can start to work with it directly instead of trying to control the outer person. In the next section, we'll look at how Epictetus trains you to make that shift, moment by moment, back to what is truly in your control. Tonight, we must separate what is yours in this inner relationship and what never was. Separating the two is the only way to get your attention and your peace back. His simplest, most demanding claim is this: some things are up to you, some things are not. That's it. But he spends an entire lifetime unpacking those two short sentences, because your mind constantly confuses the two. For Epictetus, what is truly yours is very specific: your opinions, your impulses, your desires and aversions. In more modern language, your judgments, your choices, your focus, the stories you tell yourself about what happens. Not the weather, not the past, not other people's behavior, not your reputation in their eyes. So bring the person in your mind into this frame. Their feelings about you are not up to you. Their choices tomorrow are not up to you. Whether they text back, whether they apologize, whether they finally understand you, none of that belongs to you. But the way you keep rehearsing those possibilities in your mind, that is yours entirely. Notice the paradox. You cannot actually reach into their nervous system and move their emotions around. You cannot reach into the past and adjust the scene, but you spend hours as if you could. You treat your own head like a control room for their life, while the one place you do have power, your attention, your interpretation, your next action, is left on standby. Jung understood a version of this. He saw how projection pulls your psychic energy outward into someone else's image. Epictetus is looking at the same movement from another angle. He keeps asking, where is your power in this moment? Is it in them, or is it in how you meet the thought of them? So when you find yourself spiraling about what they're thinking right now, you can pause. You can quietly ask, is what I am thinking about right now actually mine to govern? If the answer is no, their mind, their future, their opinion, you gently put that thought back down. If the answer is yes, my reaction, my boundaries, my next step, you stay with that. This is not a one-time insight. It is a training. Daily, sometimes hourly. You will forget, and then remember, and then forget again. But each time you remember and return your energy from their imagined world back to your own life, you are loosening a chain. In the next section, we'll go further into that training, and you'll see how Epictetus turns even the most difficult person into a kind of practice partner for your freedom, instead of a tyrant in your mind. So when Epictetus calls this person a practice partner, not a tyrant, he is already turning the mirror back toward you. The real question is no longer, why are they like this? The real question becomes, why does this live so powerfully in my own mind? Consider something that can feel almost insulting. The sheer intensity of your fixation says more about your inner landscape than about their objective importance. Two people can receive the same criticism, the same breakup, the same betrayal. One feels pain, then slowly moves on. The other is pierced, haunted, constantly replaying every detail. The outer event is similar. The inner world is not. When someone takes up this much space inside you, Epictetus would say you are disturbed not by them, but by the views you take of them. Jung would add that the person in your mind has become a carrier of your own unexamined fears and needs. Together, they are pointing to a place in yourself that you have not yet turned toward. Think of someone who cannot stop thinking about a critic. A single harsh comment loops for days. Underneath, there is often a deep fear of inadequacy, a story that says, if they see me as small, then I am small. The critic becomes powerful. because they sit right on top of a wound that was already there. Your obsession is not just about their words. It is about your terror that their words are secretly true. Or consider someone who is obsessed with an ex. The relationship ended months ago, maybe years, and yet every quiet moment collapses back into memories, into fantasies of reunion, into imagined conversations. Often, behind this is a terror of abandonment, of being unworthy of love unless that particular person chooses you. The ex becomes a symbol, a stand-in for the question, am I lovable at all? In both cases, the other person is functioning as a mirror. Jung understood projection as this strange, psychological trick, where you place disowned parts of yourself onto someone else, and then react to them as if they lived out there. The qualities you most admire in them, and the ones you most hate, usually point to something you have not claimed or not owned in yourself. The strength you envy in them may be a strength you have never allowed yourself to develop. The anger you condemn in them may be anger you have forbidden in yourself, so it bursts out through fascination or judgment. What you call thinking about them is often actually your own unlived life, circling around a convenient figure. So Epictetus says, look to your judgments. Jung says, look to your projections. Together, they invite a different first question. Instead of asking, why are they like this? Begin asking very quietly, what part of me is so activated here, and what does it need from me? Not from them, from me. Jung would tell you that the figures who haunt you are rarely there by accident. In his language of individuation, these inner figures are often carriers of the very material you most need to integrate in order to become more whole. The critic carries your fragile sense of worth. The ex carries your capacity to love and to be alone. The rival carries your ambition. The mentor carries your buried potential. When you find yourself constantly returning to someone in your thoughts, you are standing in front of this hidden mirror. You can keep polishing the image of them, arguing with it, pleading with it, or you can slowly turn around and ask, if this is my own material, what is it asking me to grow into? And here is where Epictetus and Jung meet, in a way that could set you free. Because once you see that the person in your mind is also a messenger from your own depths, the entire nature of the practice changes. You are no longer just trying to get rid of them. You are trying to listen. You are trying to reclaim the energy you invested in them and use it to build the parts of yourself you abandoned. But how do you actually do that in real time when the thoughts feel overwhelming and the pull toward them is so strong it almost hurts? In the next section, we'll step into that moment and walk through, step by step, how Epictetus would have you respond the very next time their face appears in your mind. So when their face appears again, when the old pull returns, you are not just dealing with a person, you are dealing with a story, or more accurately, 3 stories you keep telling that quietly organize your whole inner relationship to them. There is the villain story. In this story, they are the main source of your suffering. Your mind circles constantly around their cruelty, their selfishness, their indifference. You replay the moment they ignored you, the message they never answered, the comment that cut too deep. You narrate it to yourself again and again. If they hadn't done this, I wouldn't feel like that. The villain story looks like it is about their character, but it is actually about a part of you that feels powerless, betrayed, or ashamed. A part that cannot bear its own pain, and so it searches for someone to carry it. Someone to blame, someone to hate, someone to hold responsible for everything you do not yet know how to hold inside yourself. When you rehearse how wrong they were, Slowing down reveals a younger layer beneath the anger. The child who had no control. The teenager who was humiliated. The adult who still believes, if they had treated me differently, I would finally be okay. Jung understood this as projection. You take an inner wound and throw it outward onto a convenient screen. Then there's the second story, the savior story. Here, they are not the villain. They are the one who could finally heal you, validate you, complete you, if only they behaved differently, if only they chose you, if only they apologized, if only they came back, or finally saw you clearly, or loved you the way you imagine love should feel. In the savior story, you are constantly waiting for their message, their approval, their change of heart. Your energy drifts outward toward their imagined transformation, and your own life goes dim in comparison. Beneath the savior story is a part of you that doubts its own worth and capacity, a part that quietly believes, I cannot be whole by myself. I need someone else's attention to prove I exist. Jung would tell you that this is still projection. You outsource your own wholeness to their affection. You hand them the keys to your value, then suffer when they do not use them the way you hoped. And then there is the third story, the judge story. In this one, you live in their imagined courtroom. You constantly picture what they think of you. You replay every interaction as if they are sitting on a bench, evaluating you, scoring you, deciding if you are good enough, smart enough, attractive enough, successful enough. Here's the pattern interrupt. Notice that in all three stories, you are the one on center stage. Even when you cast them as villain, savior, or judge, the stories are really about your own power, your own worth, your own shame. If you can begin to see that, even a little, it could set you free. Because in the next section, we will not try to erase these stories. We will ask, instead, how Epictetus would have you meet each one in real time with a different kind of attention. These stories unfold in a familiar place, not in the outer world, in the inner courtroom of your own mind. You know this courtroom well. You lie in bed, the room is quiet, but inside, there is a trial in progress. You can see their face as if they were right in front of you. The slight tightening around their eyes, the raised eyebrow, the look that you read as disappointment or disdain. And before you know it, you are on the witness stand, explaining yourself, defending your choices, replaying the moment again and again. You argue your case. You list your reasons. You imagine what you should have said, or you shrink in shame and decide there is no defense at all. The verdict feels inevitable, guilty of not being enough, guilty of saying the wrong thing, guilty of wanting too much. No one else is in the room, yet the trial feels entirely real. Epictetus would ask you a very simple question here. Who made them judge? Not in the legal sense, but in the inner hierarchy of your life. When you let someone's opinion, or your projection of their opinion, determine your peace, you have quietly made them your master, and yourself their slave. And they may have never actually asked for that role. Remember, Epictetus knew real slavery. When he uses that word, he is not being poetic. He is pointing to what actually happens when you hand over your power of judgment. Your mood rises and falls with a look you imagine, with a sentence you rehearse, with a story about what they must be thinking. You are chained, not by their actions, but by the way you constantly keep the trial going. And here's the strange part. Very often, the person you are so afraid of is not thinking about you at all. They are absorbed in their own worries, their own inner courtroom, their own judge, or they are thinking something entirely different from the script you have written. Yet in your mind, The proceedings continue. Witnesses are called. Evidence is reviewed. Sentences are pronounced, all without their participation. Jung understood this as one face of projection. You are not only projecting traits onto someone, you are projecting an entire tribunal, an entire moral authority, into their imagined gaze. Every hour spent under that gaze is an hour not spent in real relationship with yourself. So you might ask, quietly, what if the only verdict that truly matters is your own considered judgment, not the panicked judgment of the frightened child on the stand, but the slower, more grounded judgment that aligns with your values? What if you let that be the final word, instead of the fantasy verdict in someone else's imagined mind? In the next sections, we will explore how to step out of this courtroom altogether, how to move into a different inner space, governed less by accusation and defense, and more by your own reason, your own compassion, your own clear seeing. To step out of that courtroom, you first have to see how you built it, brick by brick, thought by thought. A single passing insult slowly turns into a lifelong sentence in your own mind. It begins with something very ordinary. You are in a meeting. You offer an idea. A colleague tilts their head, lets out a small sigh, and says, in that slightly sharp tone, "We already tried that. It didn't work." People shift in their chairs. You feel heat rise in your face. You move on, because the meeting has to continue. Outwardly, it ends there. But that night, as you lie in bed, it begins again. The first replay. You hear their tone. You see the expression on their face. You feel the embarrassment in your chest, almost as if it is happening now, not hours ago. And then your mind starts crafting better lines. The perfect comeback. The calm, cutting response you wish you had given. With each imagined reply, the emotional charge grows a little stronger. The event itself is over in seconds. The replay can last for years. Every time you revisit the scene, you add something, a detail you are sure you saw in their eyes, an interpretation of their motive. They've never respected me. Everyone thinks I'm incompetent. The simple moment becomes a story about who you are and how you believe others see you. Jung understood that this is the moment where projection takes over. The colleague in your mind is no longer just someone in a meeting. They become the screen for your old fears, your earlier humiliations, your childhood experiences of not being taken seriously. Slowly, they turn into a symbol. Not just this critic, but all critics. Not just this failure, but every failure you still carry. So now, when you find yourself thinking of them, you are not only remembering one comment, you are activating a whole network of old wounds. Your energy doesn't stay in the present relationship. It flows backward into everything unresolved. A single person begins to feel like a constant threat to your worth, because they stand for something much larger than themselves in your inner world. Epictetus would say, the sharp remark was never in your control. Their tone, their opinion, their passing judgment belong to them. But the way you constantly rehearse it, the way you crown them as an inner tyrant, that is maintained by your repeated consent, often quiet, often unconscious. You keep renewing the sentence each night you replay the scene, and if you can see that mechanism clearly, if you can watch it in real time, then another possibility opens that could set you free. Because the next time that scene starts to roll, you will face a different question entirely. You will face a different question entirely. Not, why did they do this? Not, what should I have said? But a very simple, very quiet interruption. What if I do not watch this episode again right now? Take that as an experiment, not a lifelong vow. not a dramatic decision about never thinking of them again. Just the next replay, the next moment when you find yourself reaching for the familiar scene as automatically as you might reach for your phone in the dark. In that instant, you pause. You ask, almost gently, almost curiously, what if I simply do not press play? You are not denying that it happened. You are not pretending that the words were not said, or that the loss did not occur. Epictetus would say, the event belongs to the past, but your judgment of it, your constant revisiting of it, belongs to the present. What you are refusing is not reality. You are refusing to re-injure yourself in this particular moment by running the blade across the same place in your mind. So, what do you do instead? You bring your attention down from the screen of the inner movie into the simple weight of the present. You feel the bed beneath your back, the texture of the sheet under your hand, the rise and fall of your breathing, the faint sounds in the room, or the distant traffic, or the hum of the night. You are taking energy away from the projection and giving it back to your actual life. Of course, the pull to return will come. The mind will whisper that you must think it through to be safe, that if you can just replay it one more time, you will finally understand what actually happened, finally protect yourself from it ever happening again. Jung understood this as the mind's attempt to complete a story that cannot be completed at that level. Epictetus would call it another impression, not a command, not a law, just a suggestion, arising in consciousness that you are free to accept or decline. So you notice that pull as another impression. You see the opening credits of the episode starting again, and once more you ask, what if I do not watch this right now? Then you return, however briefly, to the breath, to the weight of your body, to this particular moment of your life. Each time you do this, even for a few seconds, you are weakening the inner tyrant you once crowned. You are loosening the voluntary slavery Epictetus warned about. Someone who once ruled your inner world becomes, slowly, just another thought passing through. And in the space that opens, something else can begin to grow. In the next part, we will look at what that something else might be, and how to fill that cleared space with a very different kind of attention. So now that a little space has opened, we can finally turn toward the real question. Not, why are they like this? But, why do they live like this in my mind? This is where the work begins. Gently bring this person to mind. Not the whole story, not the scenes you constantly replay, just their presence, as if they were standing in the doorway of your awareness. And then notice, what is the first emotional flavor that rises in you? Fear, longing, anger, shame, admiration, a strange mixture of several at once. Don't rush past that. Stay with it. When you let their image sit quietly in your inner space, does your chest tighten? Do you feel small, or exposed, or suddenly hopeful? Jung understood that this first wave of feeling is a compass. Epictetus would say, it reveals the judgment you are secretly making about them and about yourself. Now ask yourself, very directly, when you think of them, what do you most want from them? Do you want their approval so that you can finally feel enough? Do you want an apology so that your pain feels recognized? Do you want closeness to end a sense of inner emptiness, or distance so you can stop feeling constantly judged? Do you crave recognition or justice, or simply to be seen as you truly are? Your mind rarely obsesses without a request. Behind the mental repetition, there is almost always a hidden ask, a wish, a demand. If you can name it, you move from slavery to inquiry. Then go deeper. What might this person symbolize inside you? Do they stand in for a parent you never fully had? whose gaze you are still trying to win? Do they embody a standard you never feel you meet, the internal critic you cannot satisfy? Do they represent a freedom you deny yourself, a life you secretly desire but do not permit? Or are they the face of a wound that has not yet been grieved, the moment you never allowed yourself to mourn? Here, journaling can become a quiet, powerful ritual. Take a page and write, slowly. To me, they represent, and finish the sentence. Not once, but 5, 10 times. Let the obvious answers come first, then wait for the strange ones, the ones that surprise you, the ones that feel slightly uncomfortable, but also true. When you find yourself doing this, something shifts. The obsession stops being only a problem. It becomes a message, a signal from a deeper layer of yourself, pointing toward an unattended grief, an unlived desire, a neglected value. If you can stay with that message, instead of running back to the old story about them, the entire relationship in your mind begins to reconfigure. In the next section, we will explore how to respond to that message and how to give yourself what you have been unconsciously demanding from them. So let's follow that message a little deeper, not back into the old story about them, into a quieter, more uncomfortable place inside yourself. Carl Jung offered a gentle but powerful idea. He said that each person carries a shadow, not evil, not a curse, but a collection of qualities, impulses, and potentials that have been pushed out of conscious awareness. Parts of you that felt unacceptable, dangerous, too much, or simply out of place in the world you grew up in. They did not disappear. They went underground. When you find yourself constantly preoccupied with someone, you are often circling around your own shadow without knowing it. The mind says, it's about them. Looking closer, your psychic energy is orbiting traits you have disowned in yourself. Jung understood that the shadow is rarely seen directly. It is seen through projection. Projection means you see out there what you cannot yet tolerate in here. It is easier to call someone selfish than to feel your own anger about always giving. It is easier to call someone aggressive than to admit you have a capacity for force, for saying no, for protecting your boundaries. It is easier to admire someone's power, sensuality, or confidence than to face the ways you have kept your own power, your own body, your own voice on a very tight leash. Think of the person you resent for being selfish. You might say, they never think about anyone else. You replay every moment they chose themselves. You build a case in your mind. But underneath that projection, there may be a neglected need in you to choose yourself, to set limits, to stop constantly overgiving. Your hatred of their selfishness might be a distorted cry from the part of you that is exhausted from self-sacrifice. Or think of the person you idealize for their confidence. You place them on a pedestal. You tell yourself a story that they are fearless, magnetic, free. You feel small in comparison, yet that idealization may be pointing to your own unlived boldness. The speeches you never gave, the invitations you never sent, the life you have not yet allowed yourself to step into. So here is the brave question. What do I most criticize or worship in this person? And where might that same quality live, in some form, inside me? Not identical, not as extreme, simply present, waiting, distorted by shame or fear. Turning this question inward could set you free from the endless analysis of them. Jung would tell you that this work of withdrawing projections is not a side task. It is central to individuation, to becoming a more whole, less divided person. Each time you take back a projection, you reclaim a piece of yourself. You become less at the mercy of other people's presence or absence, praise or rejection. But there is a challenge here. How do you actually begin to take back a projection without collapsing into guilt or confusion about the relationship itself? In the next section, we will step into that territory very carefully, and we will see what changes the moment you dare to say, "This is mine." Epictetus would step in here and add something very direct. If someone is living constantly in your mind, he would say, they have become your trainer, not your master, your trainer. For Epictetus, every day is a gymnasium for the soul. You are constantly being given exercises in patience, in courage, in self-control, in wisdom, not in ideal conditions, but through difficult people, sharp words, disappointments, and misunderstandings. Your problem person is not an interruption of your path. They are part of your path. Think of the person you cannot stop thinking about, the one whose message or silence can still change your whole nervous system. In Epictetus's language, that person is a kind of sparring partner for your character. They reveal where you are still reactive, where you are still dependent on approval, where a single comment can throw you far away from yourself. When they appear in your mind, your attention rushes outward. Your energy leaves your own life and enters a story about them. You rehearse what they said, what you wish you had said, what you fear they will do next. Jung understood this as a kind of participation mystique. Epictetus would simply call it a kind of voluntary slavery. You hand over your inner freedom to an image. There is a danger here. Seeing someone as a practice partner does not excuse their harm. It does not mean you stay in abuse, minimize betrayal, or spiritualize cruelty. Epictetus himself knew real oppression. He never confused inner freedom with outer passivity. You can set boundaries, leave relationships, call something unjust, and still say, my reaction in this moment is my training ground. So instead of the old question, why are they doing this to me? You experiment with a different one. What is this situation training in me right now? And how do I want to respond according to my values? Patience, clear speech, refusal to engage, a clean goodbye. The outer scene may not change. The inner assignment becomes precise. Here is the pattern interrupt. You do not need them to apologize before you grow. You do not need them to understand you before you reclaim your mind. You do not even need them to disappear. You shift from asking, will they ever change, to asking, will I use this to change myself? That single movement could set you free. When you find yourself spiraling about them at night, Epictetus would invite a quiet inventory. What part of this is under my control? My judgments, my attention, my next action. What is not? Their history, their choices, their opinion of me. The more you practice this, the more you move from passive victim of their presence to active participant in your own development. In the next section, we will look more closely at how to do this in real time, so that the moment they arise in your mind, you have a clear inner protocol instead of another endless loop. So let's slow this down and look at what you are actually spending each day. Epictetus would say that your suffering does not mostly come from what happens, but from what you choose to mentally rehearse. Consider what that means in terms of energy. Not abstract energy, but the quiet fuel that runs your whole inner life. Your attention. Imagine that when you wake up, you receive a fixed amount of psychic currency for the day, a limited budget of attention. Every thought costs something, every inner conversation, every replayed scene, every imagined message. Each of them spends a little of your life force, the same force you could use for creating, for relating, or simply for resting. Now ask yourself, before you have even decided what matters to you today, how much of that budget is already pre-allocated to this one person, to their last text, to what they meant, to what they might do next, to what you wish you had said. It's like an automatic subscription that drafts from your account before you are even fully awake. When you constantly circle someone in your mind, you are not just thinking, you are spending. You are paying for a whole inner theater, trying to understand them completely, silently attempting to control their choices, predicting their moves, winning them over in fantasy. All of that is work. All of that consumes psychic energy. Jung understood that this outward investment often begins as a survival strategy. You learn to scan, to predict, to manage other people, so that you would not be hurt or abandoned. But now, that same pattern becomes a kind of voluntary slavery. Epictetus would say you have handed over your freedom to the one who occupies your thoughts. When you redirect that same attention inward, the currency does not disappear. It becomes available. You can spend it on understanding your own patterns instead of decoding theirs, on caring for your body, on building a skill that stabilizes your life, on nurturing a relationship that is actually present in the room with you, instead of a projection that is only present in your mind. And this is where the financial metaphor becomes a mirror. If your attention were visible, like money on a table, would you still slide so much of it towards someone who is not physically here right now, toward their imagined reactions, their imagined approval, their imagined return? Epictetus would invite a quiet, radical question. What if the real wealth is a mind you govern, not a person you finally win? In the next section, we will turn this into practice, so that the very moment they appear in your thoughts, you know how to pause, how to choose, and how to spend your inner currency differently. If the real wealth is a mind you govern, then we have to ask a very simple, very uncomfortable question. How much have you already spent? Time is the most honest currency you have. How many hours of sleep have you traded to rehearse their words? How many nights have you laid in the dark, body exhausted, but mind lit up with scenes in which they finally understand you, apologize to you, choose you? You wake up tired, not because of what actually happened, but because of what you kept replaying. Think about your evenings. You were on the couch, or at a restaurant, or walking through a quiet street. Your body was there, but where was your mind? How many peaceful moments have been pierced by a sudden wave of memory, by an imagined conversation, by the urge to check their profile one more time? That is not free. That is paid for with your presence. Mentally or on paper, begin a small ledger. On one side, write where I was. On the other side, where my mind went. At dinner with friends, but silently replaying the last argument. At work in a meeting, but constantly scanning your phone for their message. Sitting in nature, the wind in the trees, but inside, arguing with their absence. Notice the pattern. Again and again, your life is happening in one place, and you are living in another. Jung understood this as a loss of psychic energy to a projection. Epictetus would call it a kind of voluntary slavery. No chains on your wrists, only a chain of attention. And the cost is not only measured in minutes and hours, it is measured in mood. When someone lives in your mind, anxiety rises, and your baseline drops. You feel heavier, more irritable, more easily shaken. You doubt yourself more. You hesitate. You tell yourself that when this relationship is resolved, when they come back, when they approve, then you will finally relax, finally begin your real life. Modern research simply confirms what Epictetus saw from experience. Rumination, this constant mental circling, is strongly linked with higher anxiety and depression. The more you rehearse the hurt, the more your nervous system learns that hurt is normal. This is not about blaming yourself for any of this. You were trying to protect yourself, trying to solve something, but now you are becoming conscious of the price. And once you see the bill clearly, you can begin to ask a different question. What else could your attention be funding? In the next section, we will turn that question into a practice, and you may discover that the very person who has been costing you so much is also the one who can quietly finance your freedom. So let's turn that metaphorical bill into something practical. You have been financing someone else's presence in your mind. Now, you can quietly redirect that same energy back toward yourself, day after day, in a way that actually lasts. Begin with something small. At the beginning of the day, or just before sleep, take a blank page. Write down 3 things that are truly yours to influence today. Not their opinion, not their reply, not their behavior, your actions, your choices, your inner attitude. Perhaps it's speak honestly in my meeting, or take a 20-minute walk without my phone, or when anxiety rises, practice 1 slow breath before I respond. You are not writing goals for your whole life. You are choosing 3 places where your attention is allowed to land today. 3 places where your will can actually touch reality. Epictetus would say, these belong to you. They are inside the circle of what you can govern. As you move through your day, the old pattern will return. You are washing dishes and suddenly their face appears. You are scrolling and a post triggers the same old story. You wake in the night and there they are again, living in your mind as if they own the lease. In that moment, instead of arguing with the thought or shaming yourself for it, you do something different. You treat their image as a bell, a small inner chime that reminds you, check your 3. You quietly recall what you wrote. You pick one, anyone, and you turn a little attention toward it. Maybe you draft that honest email. Maybe you stand up and walk for 5 minutes. Maybe you place a hand on your chest and breathe once, deliberately. Then you continue. It will not feel dramatic. It may feel almost too small to matter. But the point is not intensity. The point is repetition. When you find yourself drifting back into projection, you gently, repeatedly, choose one of your 3 and invest a few more moments into your own path instead of theirs. No harshness, no inner punishment, just a steady, almost quiet refusal to keep paying the old bill. Jung understood that psychic energy follows attention. The more you rehearse a relationship in your head, the more power it gains over you. Epictetus would add, this is a kind of voluntary slavery. Each time you return to your 3, you are practicing a different freedom. You are reclaiming your judgments, your responses, your day. And if you stay with this, something unexpected may happen. The person who once felt like a tyrant in your thoughts becomes, instead, a signal, a training partner. In the next section, we'll deepen this and explore how difficult people can become exercises in strength, rather than destinations for your obsession. So now we come to a practice that can sound harsh at first, but could set you free if you stay with it. The Stoics called it premeditatio malorum, negative visualization. It is not catastrophizing, it is almost the opposite. You deliberately, calmly, imagine loss or difficulty, but you do it in a controlled way, in a quiet moment, with your eyes open to yourself. You rehearse what you fear so that if it ever comes, it no longer has the power to completely shock you, dominate you, and steal your mind. Epictetus understood this very well. He knew that you suffer most from what you mentally rehearse, not just from what happens once in reality. So the Stoic turns toward the feared scene on purpose, instead of constantly being ambushed by it at 3 a.m. Bring this directly to the someone who lives in your mind. For a moment, imagine that this relationship never resolves in the way you hope. Imagine they never apologize. They never finally see you. They never come back or approve or change in the way your story has been promising. When you let that image form, maybe your chest tightens, maybe your stomach drops, maybe there's a quiet, almost childlike panic. If they never change, how can I be okay? Stay with that, just for a few breaths. Feel the wave of fear or sadness rise, and as it rises, breathe slowly, in through the nose, out through the mouth. You are not pushing the feeling away, and you are not drowning in it. You are watching it. You are learning that even in this imagined worst case, you are still here. You are still breathing. You are still conscious, capable of living, capable of choosing how to direct your energy. The purpose of this exercise is not to depress you or to convince you that you are doomed to be alone or unseen. Its purpose is to loosen the grip of the fantasy that your life, your worth, your future, all depend on a particular outcome with this one person. When you find yourself constantly replaying scenes where they finally do what you need, negative visualization interrupts that loop. Jung would tell you that you are withdrawing projection when you do this. You are taking back the pieces of yourself that you had hidden in them. Epictetus would say, you are training yourself to place your peace, not in external events, but in your own capacity to respond with wisdom. And as you practice, something subtle begins to shift. The imagined catastrophe becomes a scenario you can face, not a god you must obey. In the next section, we'll build on this and explore how, from that calmer place, you can redirect the attention you once gave them back into the neglected parts of your own life. From that calmer place, there is another Stoic practice, a quiet one, a practice that actually pulls you out of the tight little theater of your own mind and shows you the wider stage you're standing on. Imagine you are lying in your bed or sitting in the chair where you usually think about this person. You see the ceiling above you, the familiar objects, the phone where their messages used to appear. And then, slowly, you begin to rise. You watch yourself from just below the ceiling, as if you were a gentle observer, not the main actor. You float a little higher, through the roof of your home. You see the building, the street, the nearby lights. You notice other windows glowing, other people moving, other small private worlds, each with someone who is also worrying, also replaying some conversation, also caught in their own projection of a relationship. Then you rise again, above your neighborhood, above your city. Cars become dots, people become specks. You can still locate yourself if you try, but it takes effort now. You are one point among thousands. The person who lives so constantly in your mind is there too, somewhere in that spread of lights and streets, another point among thousands. Keep going. You move above the country. Borders fade. The arguments, the text threads, the stories that once felt enormous are now thinner than a line on a map. You rise into the dark above the planet, and the earth appears as a single sphere, turning silently. Billions of lives, billions of private dramas, billions of meetings and breakups and reconciliations and quiet, ordinary days. Now, in this image, you deliberately place two tiny marks on that sphere. One is you, one is them. Two small lives, among billions, each with their own childhood, their own fears, their own limited time here, their own eventual disappearance from this stage of life. Jung understood that this is not cold detachment, but a softening of your personal myth, that this one relationship is the entire universe. The view from above is not meant to shame you for caring. It is meant to loosen the grip of the idea that your story with this person is the story. It creates space for other meanings, other connections, other uses of your energy that have been quietly waiting while your attention circled around this single figure. And there is a humbling comfort in that. In the grand sweep of time and space, countless people have suffered and healed, loved and lost, forgiven and moved on. You are not trapped in a private prison. You are walking a very human path that others have walked before you and will walk after you. So when you find yourself once again overwhelmed by their presence in your mind, return to this visualization. Rise above the room, above the city, above the planet. Gently resize them and yourself in that vastness. Because from that higher vantage point, a new question begins to appear. And Epictetus would say that how you answer it could set you free. From that higher vantage point, the question is simple but exacting. Given what happened, what story will you tell now? Not what happened. That part is already written. The question is about the meaning you will weave around it, and whether that meaning will keep you bound to them or bring you back to yourself. Epictetus repeats this in many forms. We are disturbed not by things, but by the views we take of them. The external facts are one thing. Your interpretation, your inner commentary, is another. Cognitive reframing is the deliberate practice of keeping the facts the same, but choosing a different commentary, a different angle, a different story that uses the same pieces, so the event stays the same. They left. They betrayed a promise. They spoke to you with cruelty. You are not asked to pretend that did not occur. Reframing is not erasing harm. It is refusing to let the most self-damaging meaning become the only one available in your mind. You stop saying, "This proves I am unlovable," and you begin to experiment with, "This reveals where I need stronger boundaries," or, "This shows me what I must give myself instead of waiting for someone else." Notice how the energy shifts when you do that. "They ruined my life" pins you to the floor. It freezes you in the role of victim and them in the role of all-powerful figure in your psyche. But their actions revealed where I need stronger boundaries quietly hands the power back. The same event, the same history. Yet now, the emphasis moves from their control to your capacity, from obsession to learning. Or take the phrase, "They abandoned me." That sentence keeps you constantly circling their absence. It makes your worth depend on their leaving. But when you tell the story as, "Their leaving showed me what I must give myself," something subtle changes. You become the main character again. The relationship becomes a mirror, not a prison. Jung understood that when you stay trapped in one rigid interpretation, projection hardens. The other person becomes a symbol of your wound. Epictetus would say, you have given them the keys to your inner citadel. Cognitive reframing is you quietly taking those keys back, not by lying to yourself, but by widening the frame around the same facts. Tonight, choose one painful memory with this person, just one. Write down, in plain language, what happened. Then write the story your mind automatically tells about it. After that, as an experiment, create at least 2 alternative interpretations. They must still be honest. They must not excuse real harm, but they can highlight different meanings. What you learned, what strength emerged, what limits became clear. And if a part of you protests, but this feels like letting them off the hook, pause. That is the pattern to interrupt. Reframing is not about their accountability. It is about your freedom. You are not changing the past. You are choosing what kind of future your mind will build on top of it. In the next part, we will take this even further and look at how to turn this person from a mental tyrant into an unwelcome but valuable trainer of your character. So from here, from this language of freedom, I want to take you into a different kind of question, a quieter one, a question that could set you free in a deeper way than any argument with this person ever could. If their opinion, their presence, their absence suddenly lost its power over you, who would you be free to become? Not in theory, in an ordinary morning of your actual life. You wake up tomorrow, and for the first few minutes your mind is strangely calm. You notice that you are not instantly checking your phone to see if they wrote. You are not replaying the last conversation. You are not scanning for signs. When your attention is not pulled toward them, what does it turn toward instead? Do you find yourself thinking about a book you want to read, a language you once loved, a place your body wants to move? Do you notice a desire to create, to study, to rest, to step outside and feel the air? What rises in that empty space is not trivial. It is a glimpse of your own nature. Jung understood this as individuation, the slow, sometimes painful, process of becoming more fully yourself, not the version of yourself that was constantly adjusting to someone else's reactions, not the role you played in your family, not the projection you tried to live up to in past relationships, but the person you actually are when no one is looking, when no one's gaze is organizing your whole story. Epictetus, from a different tradition, is pointing to the same movement. He keeps asking, what is truly yours? Your judgments, your attention, your choices. When you find yourself mentally orbiting another person, he would say, your ruling faculty has handed over its sovereignty. Individuation, in Stoic language, is reclaiming that inner rule and living according to your nature and reason, not according to the pull of impressions about someone else. Individuation is not abstract. It is the shift from asking, what do they think of me, to asking, what kind of life feels like mine to live? It is the shift from performing for an imagined audience to listening for an inner direction. Right now, if it feels safe enough, you might pause this and write down 3 qualities or pursuits that feel like they belong to you, independent of this person. Maybe it is curious, or patient, or artist. Maybe it is learning the guitar, or being in nature, or speaking honestly. Treat these as seeds, small, quiet seeds of a life less entangled with their image. In a moment, we will look at how to water those seeds and how to keep choosing them even when the old gravitational pull of this person tries to reclaim your mind. You have these seeds now, tiny intentions that are not about them, but about you. The question is, how do you move from orbiting their image to slowly becoming the center of your own life? For a long time, your thoughts, your choices, even your mood may have revolved around this person like planets around a sun. You woke up and checked, in your mind, where they were. You made decisions based on how it might look to them. You measured your day by whether they noticed you, replied to you, approved of you. That is life when someone occupies your mind as a kind of private deity. Epictetus would say that in those moments, you handed them your inner citadel. You allowed their imagined gaze to organize your whole psychic universe. Jung understood a similar pattern in participation mystique, where your sense of self fuses with someone else. Different language, same experience. You stop being the center of your own orbit. You do not rebuild a new center by force or by dramatic declarations that you will never think of them again. You rebuild it through small, constant acts of recentering, 1 act a day, quiet, almost unimpressive acts that redirect your energy back to yourself. So, choose one activity each day that is purely for you, not to post, not to signal, not to make them wonder. Read 3 pages of a book that grows your mind. Take a slow walk and actually feel your body moving. Draw something, badly if you must, just to remember you can create. Send a thoughtful message to someone who is actually present in your life, not just present in your projection. When you find yourself drifting back into their orbit, do not fight the thought as an enemy. Notice it, then gently ask, what is one small thing I can do for my life in the next 10 minutes? Then do that thing. Boil water for tea and sit in silence. Stretch your shoulders. Write 2 sentences in a journal. These are not escapes. They are tiny corrections, of course. Now, go deeper. Values become your gravity. Identify 2 or 3 core values: honesty, kindness, courage, creativity, or something else that feels true. Then ask, every morning if you can, what is one small way I can live this value today, regardless of what they do? Not if they text, not if they praise you. Regardless. If you value honesty, maybe you tell the truth in a small conversation where you usually hide. If you value kindness, you hold the door, you listen fully, you speak gently to yourself after a mistake. If you value courage, you make a phone call you have been avoiding. Each act is like adding mass to your own center. Slowly, your life begins to have its own weight. You are not erasing them overnight. You are building your own gravitational field. As that field strengthens, something subtle happens. Their imagined gaze does not need to be fought. It simply pulls less. You do not have to stop caring. You just care in more directions. And here is where Epictetus quietly returns. He would ask you a question that could set you free if you stay with it long enough. He would ask you a question that could set you free if you stay with it long enough. Is this person a god or a human? Not in the religious sense, in the psychological sense, in the sense of, have you quietly promoted someone in your mind to the level of an absolute, a final judge, a savior, a villain who explains everything? When you find yourself replaying their words, their face, their imagined opinion of you, see if you can add one simple sentence. They are a human being, shaped by their own wounds, not a symbol of your worth, not the embodiment of your abandonment, just a limited person carrying their own unseen weight. Your mind has been using them as a shortcut, as a symbol that concentrates a whole story about yourself. If they love me, I am lovable. If they reject me, I am nothing. If they apologize, I will finally be at peace. Epictetus would say that as long as you let someone else stand in for your peace, you have handed them your freedom. And yet, loosening this symbolic role can feel disorienting, almost like losing a clear, sharp picture. Hatred is clear. Worship is clear. Seeing them as a frightened, inconsistent, sometimes kind, sometimes selfish human, that is blurrier. It can feel like you are losing intensity, losing meaning. When you let them shrink back into human size, the feelings change texture. Devastation softens into disappointment. Burning rage cools into irritation. The tidal wave becomes a strong, but survivable, current. You do not have to erase your feelings. You just allow them to become proportionate to what really occurred. To help this, try a brief visualization. Close your eyes and picture the two of you standing facing each other. Between you there is a tangled knot of ropes, objects and labels. Some belong to them, their choices, their history, their responsibilities. Some belong to you, your needs, your grief, your longing, your path. Now, in your mind, begin to sort. Imagine placing into their arms what is truly theirs. This is your decision. This is your fear. This is your unfinished work. Feel the weight leaving your hands. Then, with the same clarity, take back what is yours. This is my sadness. This is my desire for love. This is my life to live. You are not reconciling. You are not texting. This is not a rehearsal for contact. It is an inner act of disentanglement that can happen even if you never speak again. Jung understood that such inner rituals mark the end of participation mystique. You step out of the merged field and stand quietly as yourself. And the relief, it can be subtle, then sudden, when they are no longer the symbol of everything that hurt you or everything you hope will save you. Their image loses its towering height. They become one person among many in a much larger landscape. Notice that their presence in your mind does not need to be violently cut off. It simply has less fuel, less projection, less sacred status. Your energy can begin to flow back toward your own center. In the next movement, we will look more directly at what you can do with that returned energy, and how Epictetus would have you spend it on the one life that is entirely yours. That returned energy needs direction. It needs form. One of the most powerful forms it can take is an inner boundary. We usually think of boundaries as something you set in a conversation, or in a calendar, or at a door. You say, I won't answer after this time. I won't see this person in that context. But there is another level. You can set boundaries inside your own mind. You can decide, very quietly, how much space someone is allowed to occupy in your inner dialogue. You are washing dishes or trying to fall asleep, and suddenly, you are back in that argument. You hear their voice. You feel your chest tighten. You begin explaining yourself again, defending yourself again, pleading again. No one else is there, but the relationship is consuming your energy as if they were standing in front of you. When you let that continue, you abandon yourself a second time. The outer scene ended long ago, but inside, you keep reopening it. Epictetus would say you are choosing to rehearse the injury. You are finishing their work for them in your own mind. Jung would tell you that the projection is feeding itself, constantly spinning a story, constantly reinforcing the same wound. So we introduce a boundary, a very gentle one. When you find yourself starting another imaginary argument or plea, you say inwardly, with as little drama as possible, I am not available for this conversation right now. That's it. Not, I will never think of them again. Not, I must stop this immediately. Just, I am not available for this conversation right now. And then you pair it with a redirect. The boundary is the door closing. The redirect is where you turn your face. You bring your attention to your breath, feeling one full inhale, one full exhale. Or you notice the weight of your body on the chair, the warmth of the water on your hands, the texture of the fabric against your skin. Or you picture a simple, comforting image, a candle flame, a quiet room, a tree you love. You choose an anchor that belongs to you. Your mind will test this. Expect that. Thoughts of them will knock again and again. Did you see what they posted? What if they never understood you? Each time, you repeat the boundary. I am not available for this conversation right now. Each time, you redirect. Each time, you are training a new habit, a new pathway for your attention. Epictetus would say, this is you exercising your rightful authority over your faculty of choice. You are refusing to be dragged by every impression that appears. You are learning that your inner court is not open to every visitor at every hour. In the next section, we will deepen this and look at how to turn these inner boundaries into a daily discipline so that your mind becomes a place you can actually live in, not just endure. So now you are beginning to feel that inner court, that sense that your mind is a place you can actually live in. But what happens when the person who once stormed that court still has a key to your daily life. When it is not an ex you never see, but a parent, a co-worker, a co-parent, someone you actually have to sit across from tomorrow. Some relationships cannot, and some should not, be cut off. Not your children, not the colleague you share a project with, not the aging parent who depends on you. In these cases, the work is more subtle and more demanding. You are not rearranging the outer situation. You are rearranging your inner posture toward it. There are two levels operating at the same time. On the outer level, you may still speak, negotiate, compromise, collaborate. You answer emails. You attend meetings. You sit at the holiday table. But on the inner level, something very different can be happening. On the inner level, you practice not giving their reactions the power to define your worth, your mood, your whole story about yourself. Epictetus would say, their behavior is not yours. Your judgment about it is. Jung understood something similar in a different language. He saw how easily you slide into participation mystique, that fusion where another person's frown instantly becomes a verdict on your value. When you find yourself doing this, notice that you are letting their face become your mirror. So you begin to introduce small rituals. Before contact, a brief grounding, one slow breath, two questions. What is in my control here, and what is not? Your tone, your clarity, your boundaries are in your hands. Their mood, their opinion, their history are not. After contact, another brief grounding. You gently review what actually happened, and then you set a time limit on rumination instead of letting your energy leak out for hours. You also practice observing rather than absorbing. In the moment, you imagine a slight distance, as if you were watching a scene in a play. You notice patterns. You hear their familiar complaints. You see their defensiveness, and you quietly say to yourself, this is about their training, their fears, their projections. It does not have to be about my essence. Epictetus himself lived under constant external limitation, first as a slave, then as a man exiled from Rome. The outer constraints did not vanish, but his inner freedom grew inside those constraints, like a flame protected by cupped hands. And the more you taste that inner freedom in the presence of difficult people, the more something unexpected begins to happen next, something that could set you free in an even deeper way. It shows up most clearly when they are gone, not just out of the room, out of your life. The breakup that shattered your routines, the parent who died before you were ready, the friend or partner who cut contact and never looked back. Their body is absent, but your mind has not received the message. You still talk to them in the shower. You still argue with them while you wash the dishes. You still feel, at strange moments, as if they might walk through the door. Your nervous system is older than your philosophy. It learned this person through repetition, through touch, through shared days and small rituals. So the body knows they are gone in one sense, but another layer of you still reaches for them, constantly, as if the connection should still be there. That reaching is not a weakness. It is a sign of how deeply you are wired for relationship. There is grief, and there is obsession. Grief moves like weather. Some days softer, some days unbearable. But over time it shifts, it integrates, it teaches you what life is now without that person's physical presence. Obsession does not move. Obsession is when you find yourself replaying the same scene, asking the same question, imagining the same argument, with no new understanding, no fresh insight, no inner change. When you are caught there, the relationship stops being a living memory and becomes a closed loop of projection. You are no longer with the real person because they are not here. You are with an image that you keep charged with energy. Jung understood this very clearly. He saw how the psyche can cling to an inner figure, an ex, a dead parent, a lost child, and treat that figure as if it were still directing your fate. Instead of judging that, approach it with compassion. The part of you that keeps them alive inside may be trying to protect you from the finality of loss. If you keep the conversation going, then it is not really over. Or it may be trying to protect you from facing your own life without them as your reference point. Who are you if you are not their partner, their child, their savior, their disappointment? Here is the pattern interrupt. Have you noticed that in these inner conversations, they almost never surprise you? They say exactly what you expect. They criticize you in the old familiar way. Or they idealize you in the way you wish they had. That is how you know you are now. Mostly with your own mind, your own story, your own unfinished business. Epictetus would invite you to a gentle, disciplined farewell. Not a violent cutting off, but a conscious ritual. You might write them a letter you never send, saying what was never said. You might speak aloud, in an empty room, the apology you never received, or the gratitude you never expressed. You might choose a small symbolic act of release, returning a gift, deleting a number, visiting a grave, or closing a box. And then, crucially, you return your attention to the present moment, to your breath, to the room you are actually in, to the people who are actually here. Not once, but again and again, like a quiet training of the soul. Letting their image loosen its grip does not erase love or significance. It does not rewrite history. It simply stops you from finishing the work of loss over and over in your own mind. It makes room for your own life to continue unfolding, for new duties, new joys, new forms of connection that cannot arrive while the ghost occupies the center of your inner stage. And when you begin to sense that space opening, another question arises, one that Epictetus would insist you face next. If this person is no longer at the center of your mind, what is? If that outer ghost steps off the stage, you might notice something unsettling. The silence doesn't stay empty for long. Another voice steps forward, and this one sounds very familiar. The loudest, most persistent figure in your mind might not be a current person at all. It might be an internalized voice, a composite made from past critics, parents, teachers, or the cultural standards you grew up swimming in. Not your mother, not your father, not that teacher, not that religion alone, but a woven tapestry of all of them, speaking as one. When you find yourself being attacked in your own mind, it often comes in a very particular language. It speaks in harsh, absolute terms. It speaks in the second person. You always fail. You never get it right. You should be ashamed of yourself. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't ask questions. It pronounces sentences. Notice how that feels in your body when it happens. Your chest tightens. Your stomach drops. Your energy collapses inward. And you start to believe that this is simply you being honest with yourself. When you accept that voice as truth, you hand over your inner city to a tyrant and then call it realism. Epictetus would say that this is a case of adopted judgments. You have taken other people's evaluations, other people's standards, and installed them as unquestionable truths. You repeat them automatically, as if they were part of nature. In doing so, you enslave yourself to something that is learned, not inherent. You become your own harsh overseer, constantly monitoring, constantly punishing, constantly rehearsing failure before you even act. Jung would tell you that this internal figure is a complex, an emotionally charged cluster of memories, beliefs, tones of voice, and facial expressions that has taken on a life of its own in your psyche. It gets activated by certain situations, a mistake at work, a moment of rejection, a perceived weakness, and once activated, it speaks as if it were the whole truth about who you are. So you end up in a strange relationship with yourself. Part of you is the accused, part of you is the prosecutor, and the actual, living you, the one who could learn and grow, disappears between them. This is not the end of the story. The same tools you use to deal with outer ghosts can be turned inward. You can begin to question impressions. Is this thought actually mine? Is it true? Who does it sound like? You can withdraw projections from your own past, seeing that you are talking to an old situation, not to the present moment. And slowly, by reclaiming your attention from this inner tyrant, you soften the persecution. You make room for a different inner authority, one that still tells you the truth, but without cruelty. One that Epictetus and Jung would both recognize as the beginning of genuine inner freedom. The next step is learning how to meet that inner figure directly, rather than just obeying it. How do you do that? Instead of obeying that harsh inner figure, consider something more tender. There is not only an inner tyrant in you, there is also a younger one, a smaller one, a part of you that is still convinced that thinking about this person is the only way to stay safe. Imagine that part as someone distinct from your whole self, not the entirety of who you are, not your full maturity. More like a child sitting in the back of your mind, knees pulled in, watching the door, or like a loyal guard dog that never went off duty, constantly scanning for that one person's footsteps. Jung understood that the psyche is not a single voice. It is a community of figures, each carrying a story, each holding a piece of your energy. When you find yourself circling the same person over and over, that is usually this younger figure at work. Not evil, not stupid, just scared. For a moment, if you can, close your eyes, turn toward that inner figure instead of toward the outer person, and ask, very simply, very quietly, what are you afraid will happen if we stop thinking about them? Then wait. Do not argue. Do not analyze. Just listen to what actually arises. Sometimes you will hear words. If we stop thinking about them, they'll hurt us again. If we stop, we'll be alone. If we stop, we won't know who we are without this relationship. Sometimes there are no words, only images, an empty room, a slammed door, a small child left at the window. These are not irrational fantasies. They are memories of what actually happened when you relaxed your guard in the past. Epictetus would say that this is where suffering multiplies. The event happened once, but your constant rehearsal of it in imagination makes you live it 100 times. The younger part believes this rehearsal is protection, that vigilance is safety, that projection is prevention. So you respond, inwardly, as a wiser self. You might say, we can protect ourselves in other ways now. We are not that helpless anymore. We can build a life that is not defined by them. We are allowed to rest. You are not scolding this part for its obsession. You are thanking it for its service, and then gently updating its instructions. And it will not trust you right away. That is important. This part has evidence. It remembers. So this becomes ongoing work. You return to it again and again. You repeat, calmly, that letting go of the obsession does not mean abandoning its protective role. It means moving that protection from fantasy into reality. When you keep doing this, day after day, the change is subtle but profound. The inner guard slowly lowers its weapon. The child at the window starts to turn inward, toward you, And then a different question begins to surface, one that could set you free, but that we haven't asked yet. And that question is this: who are you in this story? Are you the one they left? The one they betrayed? The one they criticized? Or are you something else entirely? The answer you quietly give, day after day, becomes an identity, not just a passing mood, a role you actually start to inhabit. Are you the one they left? The one they betrayed? The one they criticized? Or are you something else entirely? The answer you quietly give, day after day, becomes an identity, not just a passing mood, a role you actually start to inhabit. There are the old roles. I'm the one they left. I'm the one they lied to. I'm the one they never really saw. At first, these are descriptions of events. They name what happened. But if you repeat them in your mind, if you rehearse them constantly, they slowly harden into a self-portrait. You stop being someone to whom a painful thing occurred, and you start being the pain itself. Jung understood this mechanism. He saw how a single wound can become the organizing myth of a life. Epictetus, from a different angle, saw the same pattern. He would say that when you define yourself by what someone did to you, you hand them your inner freedom. You let their action, which is not in your control, govern the part of you that is in your control, your judgments, your attention, your ongoing story about yourself. So a different identity has to be invited in. I am the one who chooses what to think about. I am the one who learns from pain. I am the one who builds a life beyond them. Notice how these are not about the other person at all. They center your agency. They echo Epictetus's insistence that your mind is your own, that your true dignity lives in how you relate to events, not in the events themselves. And when you find yourself drifting back into the old name, you can practice something very simple. Once a day, or any time their image appears, pause. Feel your feet on the ground. Gently say, in words that fit you, I am the one who chooses what to think about. Or, I am the one who is learning to live beyond this, not as a shout, as a quiet, steady reminder to your nervous system of who is actually in charge now. You might wonder, does this erase what happened? Is this a kind of denial? It is the opposite. You are not rewriting the past. You are refusing to let a single chapter, written partly by someone else, define the entire book. The facts remain, but their power to name you begins to loosen. When you keep doing this, the shift is subtle. At first it feels artificial, even hollow. Then, one evening, you notice that when you tell your own story in your mind, you no longer lead with their betrayal. You lead with your response, with what you are building now. The inner narrator changes tone. Identity shifts rarely arrive with fireworks. They arrive in how you introduce yourself to yourself, in the metaphors you reach for, in the way their name shows up less and less at the center of your sentences. And there is a further step, one that Epictetus would insist on. Once this new identity has begun to take root, it has to do with how you use this freedom, moment by moment, in the very thoughts you allow to stay. In the quiet, when the lights are off and there is nowhere left to perform, Epictetus's teaching moves from idea to practice, from daylight insight to nighttime ritual. Settle into a position that feels genuinely comfortable, lying on your back or curled on your side. It does not matter. Feel the weight of yourself being held. Notice the points of contact: head, shoulders, spine, hips, legs. Let gravity do the work. Let the day begin to fall away, not all at once, but piece by piece. Bring your attention to the gentle rhythm of your breathing. You do not need to breathe a special way. Just notice it. The coolness on the inhale, the slight warmth on the exhale, the way the chest rises then falls. Thoughts about someone may still be moving through your mind. Let them pass in the background while you keep returning to this simple movement of air. Softly notice when their image appears. Perhaps you see their face, their name, a scene you have replayed 100 times. Do not push it away. Do not cling to it. Simply acknowledge it as if you were greeting a visitor at your door. Yes, you are here again in my mind. Stay there for a moment. Feel what your body does when you find yourself saying their name inside. A tightening in the throat, a weight in the chest, a little surge of energy in the stomach. This is not them. This is your nervous system responding to a projection, to a story you have been rehearsing. Now, in that same calm inner voice, offer a brief statement. You can say it silently. You are a person in my mind, not the whole of my life. I release you to your own path, and I return to mine, at least for tonight. Notice how it feels to say that, not as aggression, not as a demand, just as a boundary. Gently, bring your attention back to the physical world, the feeling of the blanket or sheet against your skin, the weight of the pillow under your head, the faint sounds in the room or outside the window, the soft movement of the breath. Each sensation is a small act of returning from them to this body, from the old story to this moment. Jung understood that attention is your basic psychic energy. Where it goes, your inner life follows. So each time you drift back into their orbit and then return to your senses, you are quietly training a new relationship with yourself. You can repeat this release every night, not to force yourself to forget, but as a reminder that your mind can rest in something larger than this single relationship. In the next part, we will look at how Epictetus would have you use this same practice in the bright chaos of the day. And if the night is where you practice this quiet release, the day is where you discover why repetition with softness is essential, because you already know what happens. You have a deep insight. You feel spacious. You fall asleep lighter. Then, the next morning, one notification appears, one memory flashes, one offhand comment lands the wrong way, and your mind is back in their orbit. Again, that return is not proof that you failed. It is proof that you are alive, that your nervous system is trained in a certain direction, that old pathways are still strong. Under stress at night, when you are tired or lonely, the mind will almost automatically reach for the most familiar story about someone, especially the most charged one. Epictetus would say you suffer most from what you choose to mentally rehearse, not from what actually happens. Jung understood the same thing in a different language. When you find yourself replaying their words, rehearsing imaginary conversations, checking their social media in your mind, even when you are not touching your phone, you are rehearsing a role. The role of the one who waits, the one who wonders, the one who is not enough. This moment is not a setback. It is training. Every time you notice, my attention has wandered back to them, you are standing at a small inner crossroads. You can let the old projection run, or you can do something else. Question the impression, set a boundary, redirect your energy back into your own life. Taking that second path, again and again, yields a slow but real shift. The groove in your mind that once belonged entirely to this person begins to widen into something more spacious. The image of them loses a little of its power. Your image of yourself gains a little more weight. And this is where the attitude matters. If you speak to yourself harshly, every time you fall back into the loop, you are still abandoning yourself for the sake of this relationship in your mind. Instead, imagine a child learning to walk. They take 2 steps, then fall. Would you scold them for falling? Or would you quietly celebrate the 2 steps, help them up, and invite them to try again? Talk to yourself that way. Of course you went back to thinking about them. This is old training. And look, you noticed sooner this time. That slight shift from judgment to curiosity could set you free. Epictetus did not promise sudden freedom. Jung did not either. Both saw inner work as a long process, a slow re-education of attention and attitude. Freedom grows through many small choices, made constantly, not through a single revelation that never needs to be repeated. So, for the next week, do not try to practice everything at once. Choose 1 or 2 tools from this episode. Maybe the nightly release. Maybe the daytime question, is this in my control? Maybe the simple act of placing a hand on your chest when you catch your mind chasing them and breathing once. Stay with just those. Watch what shifts when you repeat them, gently, through boredom, through doubt, through the urge to give up. Because in the next part, we will take this even further and ask a harder question. What if the person who lives in your mind is not actually them at all, but a hidden part of you that has been waiting to be seen? Instead of just thinking about this in the abstract, this is what it looks like to live it. Not someday, this week. For 7 days, you will quietly become a student of your own mind, using Epictetus as your guide, and this person who lives in your thoughts as your daily training partner. This is an experiment, not an exam. You are not trying to achieve perfect inner freedom in 7 days. You are gathering evidence. Evidence that your attention is more movable than it feels. Evidence that your relationship to this someone is not fixed, but actually shaped, hour by hour, by the stories you rehearse. Day 1, you just notice impressions. When you find yourself suddenly thinking of them, you pause. You say, impression, not truth, not command, just an image arising in the mind. Epictetus would say this is the first power, to see that what appears in consciousness is not yet a judgment. You write 1 or 2 lines that night. What triggered the image? How quickly it pulled your energy? Day 2, you question automatic thoughts, the text that never came, the look they gave you, the silence. You catch the sentence your mind adds. They don't care. I am nothing. I will never move on. The event is not the suffering. The added sentence is, you write down 1 thought, and next to it, 1 alternative that is less absolute, less catastrophic, even if you do not fully believe it yet. Day 3, you practice negative visualization. You imagine that this relationship never resolves the way you want. They do not apologize. They do not return. They do not finally see you. And you breathe. Staying with that image is surprising. Terror rises, then softens. You see that your survival does not depend on their change. You note, briefly, how it felt to look at the feared outcome directly, instead of circling it constantly. Day 4, you use the view from above. You picture yourself, them, your city, the whole planet, from higher and higher vantage points. Jung understood the power of this kind of symbolic distancing. Epictetus used it to loosen the grip of local dramas. You write what shifts when you see both of you as small figures in a larger unfolding. Day 5, you choose 1 old story about them and reframe it. Not to excuse harm, but to reclaim authorship. Day 6, you set inner boundaries. My judgments are mine. Their behavior is theirs. Day 7, you read your notes and ask, with real curiosity, what surprised me about my capacity to choose where I place my attention? And then you ask a second, quieter question, which will take us into the next part. If my attention can move, then who, exactly, is the one who is moving it? If your attention can move, then there is a you behind the movement. Who is the you that could emerge? Imagine yourself 6 months from now, or a year. Nothing dramatic has happened on the outside. They have not apologized. The past has not been rewritten, but you have been practicing, not perfectly, not heroically. Just gently, most days, you remember, my attention is mine. In that future morning, notice how you wake up. You open your eyes, and, for the first few breaths, your mind is not instantly filled with their face. Maybe a thought of them appears, but it is one thought among many, not a command. You feel your body in the bed. You register the light in the room. You sense your own plans for the day. The first voice you hear is your own, not theirs. As you move through that imagined day, there are still triggers, a song, a street, a message notification. Once, these would have pulled you into a long inner movie, a constant mental rehearsal of old scenes. Now, when the image appears, your response is different. You notice the surge, you name it, you breathe. You remember Epictetus's distinction. Their behavior is not in your control, but your judgment, your next thought, is. The person still appears in your mind, but as a passerby, not a tyrant, a figure crossing the stage, not the entire play. You might think, there you are. And then, almost surprisingly, your attention returns to the email you were writing, the friend you are with, the book in your hands. The inner climate is less storm, more weather you can actually read. Feel how this future self moves. The shoulders are a little lower. The gaze is less constantly scanning for signs from someone else. There is more attention flowing into your own projects, your own relationships, your own small acts of courage. You say no more easily, not only out loud, but internally. No, I will not follow that spiral right now. No, I will not finish their work of hurting me in my own mind. Jung understood this as reclaiming psychic energy from projection and bringing it back to the center of yourself. At night, this future you lies down and notices something almost strange. Sleep comes a bit sooner. The mind still wanders, but it does not cling as tightly. You may briefly replay a scene, then remember Epictetus's line. We are disturbed not by things, but by the views we take of them. And you gently reframe the view. This is not a fantasy. It is a direction. Every small act of redirecting attention, every time you catch yourself and choose your own thought, is a step toward meeting this person you are becoming. The question is no longer, why are they still in my head? It becomes, who am I, when they are no longer at the center? And that, Epictetus would say, is where real freedom begins. So let's stay here for a moment, right where you are now. You have taken in a lot tonight. Your mind has traveled from ancient Stoic porches to Jung's consulting room, and all of it has been in service of one quiet realization. The real disturbance is not this other person. It is the way you keep them alive inside your own thoughts. It is not their last message, not their silence, not their choices that constantly agitate you. It is the ongoing stream of judgments, the inner commentary, the invisible arguments you rehearse with them when you find yourself alone. Epictetus would say, you are not suffering from what actually happened, but from the story you continue to tell yourself about what happened. The dichotomy of control is simple to say, but demanding to live. Your opinions, your attention, your actions are yours. Their moods, their decisions, their past behavior are not. Each time you notice your mind drifting toward what they should have done, you are invited back. What, right now, is actually in my control? Epictetus also asked you to question impressions. When a memory of them arrives, charged and vivid, you pause. You ask, is this fact, or is this my projection? You remember that difficult people can become training partners, not mental tyrants. Their harshness trains your patience. Their inconsistency trains your steadiness. And every time you reclaim your attention as your own, you loosen the chains of that voluntary slavery he warned about. Jung takes you deeper into the inner scene. Jung understood that when someone lives in your mind, your inner world starts wearing their face. Projection means you are relating to your own fear of abandonment, your own hunger for approval, as if it were that person. The shadow shows up as the traits you cannot bear to see in yourself, so you locate them in someone else instead. Individuation, for Jung, is the slow, honest work of taking these pieces back, owning your anger instead of only seeing theirs, owning your neediness instead of only seeing their power, becoming more fully yourself, so that no relationship, not your parents, not your partner, not your ex, has to carry your unlived life. Along the way, you have gathered practices. You interrupt the mental replays when you catch them starting. You turn toward self-inquiry. What does this person represent for me? You use negative visualization to imagine losing them, not to torture yourself, but to loosen the grip of fear. You practice the view from above, seeing both of you as small figures in a much larger landscape. You experiment with cognitive reframing, asking what else this event could mean. You set inner boundaries, deciding which thoughts may enter and which must wait outside. At night, you practice release, letting the day's images drain out of your body before sleep. And through all of this, there is one quiet fact. You are already doing it. Listening this far, reflecting, feeling your own reactions, is not passive consumption. It is an act. It is you reclaiming your mind from automatic patterns. It is you beginning to step out of fusion and back into yourself. In the next part, we will turn even more directly toward that self, toward what it means to build an inner center so steady that no one, no matter how compelling, can occupy it for long. So as you lie here now, having come this far, I want to come even closer to the moment you are actually in. The light is lower, the world is quieter, but inside, there may still be one voice, one face, one scene that will not leave you alone. Maybe it is someone you love. Maybe it is someone who hurt you. Maybe it is someone whose opinion has become a kind of inner judge, constantly reviewing your day. Their image has followed you into the night, as if they have more right to your mind than you do. You are not their thoughts about you. You are not your thoughts about them. You are the one who can watch both come and go. For a moment, feel the weight of that person's presence in your mind. Notice where it sits, in your chest, in your throat, behind your eyes. And now, as you breathe out, imagine their image drifting a little farther away, not disappearing, not exiled, simply no longer pressed up against the glass of your mind. A small step back, a little more space around you. On the next exhale, let that happen again, just a fraction farther. You do not have to force anything. You are not erasing a relationship. You are loosening a grip. You are reclaiming the simple right to feel yourself from the inside. If nothing feels different yet, that is all right. Jung understood that the psyche moves slowly, like roots under the soil. The very act of seeing the pattern, of noticing how someone has occupied your inner world, means that something in you has already turned toward freedom. Epictetus would say that in this turning, you are beginning to distinguish what is yours from what is not. Your breath is yours. Your attention is yours. Their judgments, their moods, their past actions are not. When you find yourself rehearsing their story again, you will be able to remember this. So tonight, I want to bless your rest. May sleep come a little closer, and if this person appears in your dreams or in the drifting thoughts before sleep, may their edges be softer, their outline less sharp. May you remember, even then, that you can return to the feeling of the blanket, the rhythm of your breathing, the quiet fact of your own body, because this is where we are going next, deeper into that quiet fact, into the kind of inner center that not only releases others, but draws you back to yourself with a strength you may not yet believe is possible. As we move deeper into the quiet fact of your own body, know this: you do not have to do this all at once. You do not have to remember every idea, every image, every practice from tonight. When you try to hold everything, you hold nothing. It slips through your fingers. Your mind gets tired. Old patterns rush back in. And then you tell yourself a familiar story. See, I can't change. That story is not true. Instead, let this episode become something you can return to. Not a test you pass or fail, but a companion. On the nights when someone's face appears, the moment you close your eyes, on the mornings when you wake already mid-conversation in your head, when you find yourself replaying the same scene for the 20th time, you can come back here and let another voice carry some of that weight for a while. Change in the psyche is quiet and repetitive. It is not one breakthrough, it is many small returns to the breath, to the blanket, to the sense of your own outline, to the reminder that the person in your mind is a projection, not a master. So rather than trying to remember everything we explored, choose one thing, one sentence that stayed with you, one image, one practice. Maybe it is the moment you noticed how much energy you give away in silent arguments. Maybe it is the question, what am I abandoning in myself when I go back to them in my thoughts? Maybe it is simply placing a hand on your chest when the rumination starts. Pick one. Commit to it, gently, for a week. Not as a punishment, but as an experiment. Watch what happens when you practice that one thing over and over in small moments. Jung understood that repetition, not intensity, reshapes the inner world. And if it feels right, you do not have to keep this work entirely inside your own mind. There may be someone in your life who is also constantly occupied by someone else. A friend who cannot stop talking about an ex. A sibling who lives in terror of a parent's opinion. A partner who falls asleep scrolling through old messages. You might share one idea from tonight with them, not to fix them, simply to say, I recognize this in myself too. I am trying to understand it. Sometimes that shared recognition turns private suffering into a small community of honesty. Two people saying, we do this, we want something different. If this exploration has stirred something, you can go further. Epictetus can help you see how attention becomes a kind of inner freedom. Jung can help you see how projection, shadow, and childhood patterns shape who you let live in your mind. You do not need to master either of them. You only need to let their words accompany you as you keep turning, slowly, back toward yourself. And remember this, especially when the old pull feels strongest. No matter who has lived in your mind, no matter how long they have stayed, your mind is still yours. It may feel crowded, it may feel loud, but with patience, with practice, with these small returns, you can make it a kinder, quieter place to live. A place where you are no longer a guest in your own inner life, but the one who gently, steadily comes home.